Hi, welcome everybody to the Ancestors Q&A session with our esteemed guest. We're just so excited to present to you these short films and to introduce a few of the filmmakers to you this evening. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our first guest, Alyssa. Can you please introduce yourself and your film?
Hi, my name is Alice. I'm the director of the short film The Fourfold. It's a short animated film made with handmade paintings and mixed with some plants. And it's about reconsidering animism for planetary health and non-human materialities.
Wonderful, thank you. And Kirsty and Viv, could you please introduce yourself and your film?
Kia ora, I'm Kirsty Griffin and Viv Kernick, and together we directed and we were the team who made the short film Pluck, which is set in New Zealand about a Māori korowai weaver, which is the traditional feather cloaks, and her journey to make her ultimate korowai for her daughter, facing her own mortality.
A few hurdles.
Yeah. Yeah, that's us.
So beautiful. So this short film series is called Ancestors because in putting together the stories, it felt as though ancestors are present in the animate and inanimate objects, the spirit of those who came before us, as well as in the act of creation. And in starting with Pluck, I first saw Pluck at the Big Sky Film Festival. And I was just so moved by the power of creation, but also just carrying forward tradition. If you can talk about where the story came from and how you were inspired to share the story in the way that you did, following more the creation of the Cape.
Yeah, so the story of the Cape, the korowai, is traditional Maori cloak. I imagine it was something originally that was used to keep people warm, you know, when the Maori first came down through the Pacific. And I imagine over time it became, they had more time to make them, and so they started incorporating feathers in the cloaks. And this cloak that we're making the story about, this korowai, is a feather one, and we met a group of women at our local market. We live in a small town, 7,000 people, and there was this group of women and they were raffling a korowai to fundraise, and we were kind of surprised because they're normally something that's handed down through families, or they're given to people as gifts for achievements that they've made in their lives. And so we chatted with these women, and it turned out that they were all off on a hunting trip to get weka feathers, which on the two main islands of New Zealand, the weka are protected, but on this tiny wee island way out in the Pacific, they're a pest. So this bunch of ladies, they were all over 70. They were all they were a bunch of characters really, and
they were all ex-party girls.
Yeah. And they were all off to hunt.
They wanted to have fun, didn't they?
Yeah. And so we just, you know, being inquisitive, said, "Can we come along?" And they said yes. And through that that first trip, which Kirsty did, we got to know Jean. And
yeah, I went down with, there was about 7 kuya older women, and I shared a room with Jean, and she was pretty good on camera actually. So you know, she was really open, and at that point she wasn't sick, so that wasn't really the angle. We were just really curious about these women hunting birds, you know. And then as the story developed and Jean got diagnosed, it kind of became this whole other story. So that was quite an interesting progression for us, because at first it was like, okay, let's just stop. And Jean was like, no, you You can't.
This is when she was diagnosed.
She said, no, you can't stop.
We thought, oh, well, that's it. You know, the film that we'll put that one on the shelf. But she wanted to continue. And so it took us about 4 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah. And she'd made a lot of cloaks before. She'd made about 15 of them and given them to people. She's one of these women which, you know, that
generous.
Knits, she gives things, she makes food, she gives it to people. And I think with the korowai, she liked to give them to people that she felt had achieved something really important. And so
would ultimately respect the gift as much as she did, you know. That was the main,
and it was her opportunity too to make something that was very important. So there was a real kind of balance in her making and giving, I think. Yeah.
And did I understand correctly, she initially learned to make the korowai because they were offering screenings?
Yeah, it was because to encourage particularly Māori women to get tested for breast cancer and cervical cancer and all that stuff. It's quite a, culturally, it's not an easy thing to do. So to kind of encourage it, a woman called Mata McManus, she started saying, well, come along, get tested, get screened, and I'll teach you all how to make korowai. So when Jean started, it was like she was a born again Christian or something. She just suddenly found her thing, and at that age, it was.
But it was that thing of getting a group of women together and them encouraging each other.
But she was a weaver
to go
nut,
and have all these health things sorted out, and it just got Jean, and that was kind of
they called it getting your upstairs and your downstairs tested. Oh, it was this thing, okay, let's go and get our upstairs and our downstairs checked, and then we'll make some cloaks, have a cup of tea. So that was culturally, it worked, it was otherwise I don't think they would have done it. And then Jean perhaps wouldn't have found out she had cancer even. So, it was kind of, how do we incorporate all that into the film? Because it's that whole kind of circle that we weren't quite sure how to do that really, but it all just sort of happened. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so switching over to you, Alyssa, your film struck me as incredibly poetic and entrancing, and I'm curious about your process in choosing to tell your story in the way that you have.
Yeah, sure. So the film is animated, but it's based on the interview of my grandmother. So I interviewed my grandmother, and she told me about these rituals, these ancient rituals, shamanic rituals, and animistic beliefs from Mongolia and Siberia. Wow. So and then based on these interviews, there's this back and forth project. For example, I started animation first, as I already heard about these rituals as a child, so already kind of knew how it's going to be. Like, I have a big general idea, and then I started the animation, and then I started interviewing my grandmother, and then there's this back and forth process. After that, there were lots of sound editing to match the sound to the picture. And there's also features the song. The song is by Hunhushtu. They are from Tuva, from Siberia, the indigenous people. And they do this throat singing, and then it's mixed with musical instruments. They also did a collaboration with a women choir group from Bulgaria on the mountains. So the women, they sing not just like one woman sing, but many layers of singing, like echoes on the mountain. That I found, because the image, there are full of textures, and I want many layers. Yeah, and then the film is about animism, and I use lots of plants. Animism is like actually, it's not just in Mongolia and Siberia. I think it's something that is common among the indigenous communities around the world. It's basically they think that nature is alive, like rock, plants, water, weather is alive as a person. In this way, humans have respect for the other entities.
It's so incredible because you bring to life through your animation that spirit.
Oh, thank you.
How long did it take you to make?
It took me, I was working on it part-time, so I would say 2 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From the research to the end. Yeah.
Wow.
And did you do the animation?
Yes.
Look
It was a long process. Working in solitude.
That's like frame by frame.
Yeah.
Wow.
So detailed.
And I found it interesting that actually there's this aspect that I was very inspired. Actually, it's the weaving and also like making carpets and making beads. And it exists in many cultures around the world in ancient times. Even right now, it still exists. And it's always by a woman. It's always by hand. It's a super long process. And at the end, the patterns or the design is always recognized by the communities and celebrated by the communities. That's what I found very interesting and something in common with animation. What I do.
It's one of the reasons why we chose to pair your films together, because there's the aspect of weaving, which we found in quite a few of the stories.
Yeah,
And
well,
Wow.
it's that connective process too. It's more than what's at hand, but it's it's calling in a whole different energy.
and it comes from the need to survive, doesn't it? To make garments to stay warm, and through that process of making them, then these stories evolve, don't they? Because if you're there and you're using your hands, you can talk with other people, and these stories kind of
and
build,
often they're
don't they?
made communally,
Mm,
you know, which
mm,
is a great bringing together of people to make something.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's cool.
Mm.
And I saw for a brief moment our filmmakers from the Solomon Islands
Popped in.
then with some sunshine. Their internet is really pretty dicey. But in sharing a little bit about their film, it's called Sky Islands, and it's about the protected areas above 400 meters in the Solomon Islands, and how this area is where the ancestor spirits are in these tall trees. And so these women trekked in, over 10 hours into these high mountain areas to meet their ancestors and their family in the villages in these spaces, and to listen to what the forest had to say. And it's a really beautiful story. It's also quite poetic.
I will look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope she comes back in to talk about it, because it's just so special, and the energy that they put into storytelling, because in their island community, they're some of the very first filmmakers too.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
There's not a practice of cinema there. They're the ones who are doing it, so it's really special.
Yeah.
Women. They're women leading the way. It's a collective process actually with this film, but
Yeah.
there's some really incredible women leading the way there.
They're all the blokes.
Yeah.
Ones. They're making all those, they're doing big budget ones, are they?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, in indigenous cinema and filmmaking right now, who's like, there's just so much these days, just even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, things looked very different, and now there's just so many stories, and it's
I,
yeah, it's mind-blowing. So I think it's more accessible, And people are hungry to hear indigenous storytelling too. And so there's just so many voices who are encouraged to come forward and are uplifted. Apologize, I should say, I should introduce myself. My name's Tracy Rector, and I've been the Indigenous content programmer for 16 years roughly. And we are located on Coast Salish territories in what is today called Seattle, Washington. It's the home of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, Snoqualmie, Puyallup, many Coast Salish peoples. So I forgot to introduce myself and where I'm coming from. Who inspires you today in your filmmaking? And maybe we can start with Alyssa and we can do a go around.
Oh, I think in terms of the technique, maybe it's probably William Cantridge. He's a South African artist. He also works in theater. He makes prints. He also makes animated films. And then he works with charcoal on paper, huge format. And then he would walk towards because the animation is different from digital animation or other like normal animation, I would say, because it's like under camera animation. It's always drawing on the same surface, always on the same piece of paper. And then you erase the previous frame, take a photo, erase the previous frame, take a photo. So you could see the time-lapse process. So in terms of technique, I was inspired by him, but the content, I'm always inspired by my grandmother, my grandparents' story.
I think I'm mostly inspired by photojournalists, really, that, you know, through their photography can get you into cultures or households even, or places that you don't generally get a chance to see. You know, and it's more with one camera, you can actually just be a bit more unobtrusive and involved, perhaps, you know, a bit more I don't know, but participate a bit more in their lives, and I find that kind of a good way to make a film, as it's such a collaboration between you and the person that you're filming. And if there's a disconnect there, you may as well forget about it. You know.
Yeah.
But we've done quite a lot of filming with the intellectually disabled, and they're pretty amazing people to work with. And if we didn't like them or couldn't kind of understand their way of looking at the world, it would just be too difficult, you know. But
I think it is. I think it's the people that we meet that inspire us.
Yeah.
To tell their stories. Really, it's our interest in them.
And we're always interested in people that perhaps you just could easily just walk past in the street and think, or just not even notice them, or think nothing special. But everybody's got that thing that gets them out of bed in the morning, you know. And I think it's actually really good to hang around a bit and find out a bit more about people. And I find that kind of inspiration from photojournalists, I think, really inspire me. What about you?
Yeah. I think also we're part of, you know, we're a small country, and the sort of documentary making community is very supportive of each other, and always very interested to listen to what you're working on, and there's a lot of sharing. So it's actually it's not so much inspiration, but it's definitely a huge amount of support that you get when you embark on another story. And I think, you know, with documentary, you're not trying to be the best or, you know, win prizes or whatever. You just want to tell stories, and that it's not a competitive thing.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of inclusive thing, I think, and that's
I think too with particularly how we do it, we're not sort of bogged down with technical stuff, you know, because sometimes it's just like you know, we forgot to do something. But you know, it's good just to actually be with that person, and the filming's kind of a bit of a bonus. And what am I trying to say?
Yeah,
I don't know.
because we've both worked in the film industry for many years, so we kind of know the whole commercial side of dramas, and really both spending years on set was like, well, actually we can do this. We can make our own stories. You know?
They might even be slightly better.
Doesn't have to be a great big blockbuster.
Yeah.
I like that you all are very intimately involved in the process too. You know, Lisa, you have your hands on the animation. You are with the camera. And I just think that's so important because it's a dance too. It's a dance in the creative process.
Do you make films?
I do actually. I'm a filmmaker myself.
Yeah.
That's
What
how
do
I
you
got
do?
into this. I've been a filmmaker for 20 years and primarily documentary, virtual reality, and experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whole other thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Can you hear us? I think we can hear you.
Hello, Galaxy. Hi.
Hey.
Welcome.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, okay. I am Juliana Jojo Lip from Solomon Islands. I'm representing the Sky and film.
I might recap that a bit for you, Jojo. So Georgiana Lepping from the Solomon Islands, also known as Jojo, is representing the Sky Islands film.
A bit about the film Sky Island. It's a short film captured by nine of us, 9 local Solomon Islanders. So I'm here representing all of us. Zaid Namo, there's also Jeremy Gual, Daniel Kakadi, Junior Macau, and also Neil Nuya, Mana Levo, Regina, and Edward Manuga. So yeah, it's a film that takes us back to our backyard and showed us.
But don't.
Maybe, and we'll hope that your connection gets a bit better in a moment. Maybe we can go around for perhaps a last question. And I'm curious, what do you all hope people learn or understand from your film?
What do they learn? I think it's just about it's respecting older women.
Idea.
And listening to them, and the experiences that we have in life. I don't know. What do you think, Hurst? I mean, besides actually learning how to make the korowai, which was really interesting. I come from a textile background, so that was interesting. But I think it's just that everybody has a story, and some people are really great at sharing their stories, and especially if it's something that has I mean, especially with Clark, because it's such a significance to the korowai that she makes. But yeah, we just want people to love her like we do. And enjoy her story.
We need more of that these days.
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
Alyssa, what do you hope people learn from your story?
I think that for me, for myself, I think that there are lots of wisdom from my grandparents' generation, because they used to live as nomads on the Mongolian grassland. they had a different relationship, like human and nature, they were in a different context and a different relationship. And I think that the older stories from ancient times, there are lots of wisdoms, especially in our contemporary moment, of climate change, and also this human-induced negative environmental change. So I think there are a lot of things to learn from indigenous people, and also the stories from many years ago, actually.
Thank you for
I
that.
think it's also, you know, the traditions, like the Māori traditions and craft, and how relevant it still is. You know, it's like for Jean, it just gave her this whole new life. It's like she had a rebirth. She actually said that to us, that discovering something that her ancestors did, and the fact that she was actually really bloody good at it, and that, you know, just gave her this huge lift, or this power. Yeah, she just felt very
it was, wasn't it?
Very emboldened by it, and confident. And, you know, I think her life hadn't been that great. I mean, as a young woman and a young mother, and she was in a pretty violent relationship and all that stuff, and sort of having to deal with all that history, and then kind of discovering that this thing she could do, and you know, she actually never ever thought she could do it. We couldn't fit everything in the film, of course, but she told us a story about when she was a young kid hanging out with the old kuia, the old nannies on the banks of the river, and they, you know, lived in huts with mud floors, dirt floors and stuff, but they had these beautiful cloaks, these beautiful traditional Māori cloaks, and, you know, the kids weren't even allowed to touch them, you know, because they had dirty hands. And she, you know, we actually had designed this whole animation about Jean, this little kid, touching these cloaks. And I mean, that to her, I mean, just seeing the fact that she could actually achieve it and did it well, and it was something that was part of her ancestry, that, you know, that was, you couldn't, there's nothing else would have done that for her. So, you know, it was great when we came on board. She'd, you know, she's kind of in full swing, but she, you know, she'd only made 3 or 4, and by the time we'd sort of finished the shoot, she'd made 15, plus this last one for her daughter, which took nearly 2 years because of her chemotherapy and everything. But yeah, I mean, that's what I thought was great, just seeing that the old traditions can actually have huge relevance now.
Giving power.
Yeah.
Very much so.
We should do something with your beautiful animation. We needed animation. We could only afford a little bit of animation.
Yes, because we couldn't always have the cameras rolling. It's like, well, how do we go from that scene to that scene? Yeah. But yeah, we had all this beautiful animation ideas, but the reality of it was like, damn. But yeah, it was great. It was a great thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, if we hadn't had COVID-19, I would never have finished editing it. So that was great. Thanks for the lockdown.
It's so interesting what the lockdown has achieved.
Yeah.
Alyssa, are your grandparents still alive, and have they seen this story? Have they seen your animation?
Yeah, my grandmother, yeah, she saw the animation. She didn't realize that the voice was kind of used in this animation. At the beginning, I just asked him questions and back and forth, and at the end became an animation. Looks quite abstract. Yeah.
It sounds like she was surprised.
Yeah, a little bit.
Was that your grandmother's voice?
Yeah, that was
Jojo, can you hear us? Sounds like the connection is just really tough.
She sort of the first filmmakers, from the Solomons.
That's
a
big.
Huge deal.
Hopefully she can hear us.
Huge.
Yeah.
She should be very proud to have done that.
Well, I hope that you all have a chance to see the Ancestors Showcase, one another's work, and um, really sense that feeling of the ancestors coming through all of your stories and all of the natural elements too that I think tie, all of the narratives together. It's just
Nice programming.
powerful.
Yeah. Good on you.
Totally. Well, Jojo, I think we should wrap it up for the night. We really appreciate that you've tapped in. I know this has just been tough. So the Sky Island, just read this out. So Joe typed in, the Sky Island crew is happy and humbled to be part of the Seattle International Film Festival. We are grateful that you were able to join us, Jojo, even in the way you have. These are just strange times, and I'm just grateful that you're trying to make it work in this way, and that everybody's connecting from all over the world in this moment. It's just so special and unique, and we're going to keep trying our best to uplift Indigenous stories and keep you all connected too.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you all.
Good to meet you
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Good
Are you
night.
going,
Thank you
are
so
you going to
much.
go to bed now, Alyssa?
Or you can go for a jog.
Oh, one last comment from Jojo. As a local filmmaker, this is a big deal, and I'm honored to listen to the others speak as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Looking forward to seeing
thank
her
you.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have a gin and tonic now.
Yeah.
All right. And I'll listen to some coffee. Good night.
Good night.